The wind cut sharply through downtown Chicago, weaving between glass skyscrapers and empty sidewalks like a warning no one listened to. Ethan Caldwell stood near the curb, his tailored coat barely shielding him from the cold. His phone buzzed relentlessly in his hand, but he ignored it. He already knew what it was. More calls, more damage, more collapse. Vanessa had made her move, and it was devastating. She's filed the petition, Ethan. It's official. His lawyer had said just minutes ago. They're claiming psychological instability. If the court accepts it, you could lose control of everything within days. Everything. His company, his name, his life's work. Gone, not because he failed, but because he trusted the wrong person. Ethan exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the air as he stared at nothing. 5 years of building an empire, and it was unraveling in a single night. "Excuse me, sir." The voice was soft, too soft for this kind of city. Ethan frowned slightly and turned. That was when he saw her. A little girl, 6, maybe, standing a few feet away. Her coat was too thin for the weather. Her sneakers were worn, laces uneven. Her hair, dark and slightly tangled, framed a face that should have been full of life, but wasn't. She wasn't scared. That was the unsettling part. She wasn't crying. She was just waiting. Ethan looked around instinctively. No parents, no guardians, nothing, just her. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. The girl didn't flinch. "I don't have anywhere to go tonight," she said simply. No drama. No tears, just truth. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. "That's not possible," he muttered. "Where are your parents?" The girl hesitated. Then she looked down at her hands. "I'm trying to find someone who can help my mom," she said quietly. Something in her tone. It didn't match her age. It was too composed, too practiced. Ethan stepped closer, and that's when he saw it. Wrapped around her small wrist was a worn leather bracelet, old, cracked, but unmistakable. His breath caught. No. That wasn't possible. He crouched down slowly, his expensive coat brushing the dirty pavement. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice suddenly low. The girl instinctively pulled her arm closer to her chest. "My mom gave it to me," she said. Ethan's heart began to pound. "What's your mom's name?" The girl looked at him carefully, as if weighing whether he deserved the answer. Then she spoke. "Clara Bennett." The world went silent, completely silent. Ethan felt like the ground beneath him had vanished. Clara Bennett. A name he hadn't heard in 6 years. A name he had forced himself to forget. A name that once meant everything. He stared at the girl. Really stared this time. The shape of her eyes. The curve of her jaw. The quiet strength in the way she stood. And suddenly, it hit him. Hard. Too hard. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice barely holding together. "Emma," she replied. "Emma." Ethan swallowed. "Emma, where is your mom right now?" "She's at the hospital," the girl said. "She won't wake up." Each word landed like a hammer. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief second. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't chance. This was something else. Something he couldn't outrun anymore. His phone buzzed again. This time, he glanced at it. Vanessa Hale calling. He declined it without hesitation. Then he looked back at the girl. At Emma. At the bracelet. At the past he had buried. "All right," he said finally, standing up and offering his hand. His voice had changed. Softer. Steadier. More certain than it had been all night. "I'm going to help you." Emma studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she placed her small hand in his. And in that exact moment, Ethan Caldwell made a decision that would cost him everything. Or save him. He just didn't know which yet. Ethan did not let go of her hand. Not when they crossed the street. Not when the wind grew colder. Not even when the city noise swallowed them whole again. It had been years since he had felt this kind of unease. The kind that did not come from business risks or financial threats, but from something far more dangerous. Memory. Emma walked beside him quietly, her small fingers curled trustingly around his. She did not ask questions. She did not complain about the cold. She simply followed. That unsettled him even more. Children were not supposed to be this composed. "How long has your mom been in the hospital?" he asked, keeping his tone steady. Emma looked ahead, her voice soft but clear. 3 days. "And you have been alone all this time?" She nodded. Ethan stopped walking. The weight of that answer hit him harder than any legal threat Vanessa could throw at him. "Where have you been sleeping?" he asked. Emma hesitated for the first time. "In different places," she said. "The bus station, one time behind a restaurant. A lady gave me bread yesterday." Ethan turned his face slightly, his jaw tightening. 3 days. A 6-year-old child had survived 3 nights alone in a city like Chicago. And she stood here as if it were normal, as if the world had already taught her not to expect anything better. His grip on her hand tightened unconsciously. "We are not doing that anymore," he said quietly. Emma looked up at him, studying his face. "You sound like my mom," she said. The words struck deeper than they should have.
Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay focused. Which hospital is she in? Emma pointed down the street. St. Mary's. Of course. It was only a few blocks away. Ethan raised his hand and signaled his driver, who had been waiting discreetly across the street. The black car pulled up almost instantly. The driver stepped out, opening the back door, but froze slightly when he saw the child.
Ethan did not explain. Take us to St. Mary's Hospital, he said. Yes, sir. They got into the car. Emma sat beside him, clutching her sleeve with a bracelet rested underneath. Ethan stared at that small movement. That bracelet. He remembered the exact day he had bought it. It had not been expensive, not even close. Back then, he could not afford expensive things. It had been from a small street vendor on a rainy afternoon. Clara had seen it and smiled, not because of its value, but because of how simple it was. You always try to solve things with logic, she had told him that day, laughing softly. But sometimes the smallest things mean the most. He had rolled his eyes back then. He had always been like that. Practical, driven, focused on the future. Clara had been the opposite, gentle, patient, present. She had believed in things he could not quantify. Hope, faith, people. Ethan closed his eyes briefly as the memory tightened around his chest. He had left her. Not slowly, not painfully, but completely. I will come back for you, he had said that night, standing at the doorway of that cramped apartment. Clara had stood there, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to memorize it. I know you will, she had replied softly. She had believed him. That was the worst part. She had believed every word. Ethan opened his eyes. The city lights blurred past the window. He never came back. Not once. Not even a call. Success had come faster than he expected. Money, power, influence. Each step forward made it easier to forget what he had left behind. Or at least pretend to. Did you know my mom before? Emma's voice broke through his thoughts. Ethan turned his head slowly. She was watching him now. Really watching him. Children saw things adults tried to hide. He hesitated. Yes, he said finally. A long time ago. Emma tilted her head slightly. Were you her friend? The word felt too small, but he nodded anyway. Yes. She seemed to accept that answer. My mom does not have many friends, she said. She works a lot. Ethan felt a dull ache settle in his chest. Of course she did. Clara had always worked hard. Even back then. She never complained. She had taken extra shifts, cleaned houses, done whatever she could just to survive. And he had left her alone to carry everything. Is she going to be okay? Emma asked suddenly. Ethan paused. He did not know. And for once in his life, he could not solve the problem with money or strategy. But he looked at her anyway. And he made a promise he had no right to make. I am going to do everything I can, he said. Emma studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, as if that was enough. The car came to a stop. St. Mary's Hospital stood in front of them, bright and sterile against the dark sky. Ethan stepped out first, then helped Emma down. She held his hand again without hesitation. As they walked inside, the warmth of the building hit them, along with a quiet hum of machines and distant voices. Ethan approached the front desk. I need information about a patient, he said, his tone firm but controlled. Clara Bennett. The nurse typed quickly, then glanced up. Are you family? Ethan hesitated for a fraction of a second, then he answered. Yes. The word felt heavy, real. Second floor, the nurse said. Room 216. Ethan nodded and turned. Emma's grip on his hand tightened slightly as they stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. The silence inside was thick. Ethan could feel his heartbeat in his chest. Each floor number lighting up felt like a countdown to something he was not ready to face. The doors opened. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. They walked slowly, their footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor. Room 216. Ethan stopped in front of the door. For a moment, he could not move. 6 years. 6 years of absence. 6 years of silence. And now, everything he had buried was waiting on the other side of that door. Emma looked up at him. You can open it, she said gently, as if she understood, as if she knew he was the one who needed courage. Ethan swallowed. Then, he pushed the door open. The room was dim. Machines beeped steadily in the background. And there she was, Clara Bennett, lying still on the hospital bed, her face pale, a bandage wrapped around her head, her body unmoving. For a moment, Ethan could not breathe. The woman he once knew, the woman who used to laugh easily and smile at the smallest things, now looked fragile, broken. Emma let go of his hand and ran forward. Mama, she whispered, climbing carefully onto the chair beside the bed. She reached out, holding Clara's hand gently. I am here. Ethan remained near the door, frozen. This was real, too real. He had imagined many things over the years, success, failure, revenge. But never this. Never standing in a hospital room, staring at the consequences of the life he had abandoned. Emma turned slightly. Can you come here? She asked softly. Ethan hesitated, then, slowly, he walked forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. He stopped on the other side of the bed, close enough to see every detail.
close enough to remember everything. Clara's fingers twitched faintly under Emma's small hand. Ethan's breath caught. Was that movement real, or just his imagination? Doctor said she might wake up, Emma whispered, but she has not yet. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. His eyes drifted to Clara's face. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel it fully, the regret, the guilt. The weight of everything he had done, or failed to do. I should have come back, he said quietly, almost to himself. Emma looked at him. You are here now, she replied. Simple, honest, and far more forgiving than he deserved.
Ethan closed his eyes briefly, but deep inside, he knew something. This was not just a coincidence. This was not just a second chance. This was a reckoning. And it had only just begun. Far away, in a luxury apartment high above the city, Vanessa Hale stood by the window, her phone pressed tightly against her ear. Where is he? She demanded coldly. Her voice carried no warmth, only control, only calculation. He has not returned home, the voice on the other end replied, but we tracked his car. He is at St. Mary's Hospital. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. A hospital, she repeated. Interesting. Very interesting. She ended the call slowly, a faint smile forming on her lips. Whatever Ethan was doing there, it was not part of her plan. And she did not like variables she could not control. She turned, grabbing her coat. Then she spoke quietly to herself. Let us see what you are hiding, Ethan. Back in the hospital room, Ethan stood silently beside the bed. Unaware that the past he had buried, and the war waiting for him outside, were about to collide in a way that would change everything. Ethan did not leave the hospital room. Not when the hours passed. Not when the city outside sank deeper into the night. Not even when his phone vibrated again and again in his pocket, each call carrying the weight of a collapsing empire. He stood there, one hand resting lightly against the cold metal rail of Clara's bed, his eyes fixed on her unmoving face, as if sheer will alone could bring her back. Emma had fallen asleep sometime after midnight. She was curled carefully in the chair beside the bed, her small hand still wrapped around her mother's fingers, as though letting go would mean losing her entirely. Ethan had draped his coat over her without thinking. It was the first instinctive act of protection he had allowed himself in years. The room was quiet, too quiet, and in that silence his past and present began to collide in ways he could no longer ignore. His phone vibrated again. This time, he pulled it out. Ryan. Ethan answered without stepping away. Talk to me, he said quietly. Ryan did not waste time. His voice was tight, controlled, but laced with urgency. She moved faster than we expected, Ryan said. Vanessa filed the full motion 2 hours ago. Emergency hearing. Private judge. No delay. Ethan's eyes darkened slightly. On what grounds? You already know. Ryan replied. Mental instability. Emotional breakdown. They are claiming you are unfit to lead the company. Ethan let out a slow breath. Of course she was. Vanessa never made partial moves. She went for total control. What evidence? Ethan asked. There was a brief pause on the other end. Then Ryan spoke again, more carefully this time. She has statements. Medical claims. Witness testimony. Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. Witnesses? He repeated. Yes. Ryan said. A psychiatrist has already submitted an evaluation stating you show signs of severe stress disorder, impaired judgment, and erratic behavior patterns. Ethan almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was precise, calculated. Vanessa had studied him long enough to know exactly which weaknesses to weaponize. And the judge? Ethan asked. Granted temporary review status, Ryan replied. Effective immediately, your executive authority is under investigation. The board has been notified. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. There it was. The first crack. How long do I have? He asked. 48 hours before the board votes on interim control, Ryan said. If they side with her, she takes over everything until the case is resolved. Everything. Ethan looked across the room. At Emma. At Clara. At the life he had ignored. And for the first time, the word everything did not mean what it used to. Prepare a response, Ethan said quietly. We are already working on it, Ryan replied. But Ethan, she came prepared. This is not just legal pressure. She is trying to destroy you completely. Ethan's gaze hardened. I know, he said. Where are you? Ryan asked. Ethan hesitated. Then he answered honestly. At the hospital. Ryan paused. A hospital, he repeated. What are you doing there? Ethan looked at Clara again. Then at Emma. I am dealing with something more important, he said. Ryan exhaled sharply. Ethan, with all due respect, there is nothing more important than this right now. If you lose control of the company, you lose everything. Your assets, your influence, your leverage. You will not be able to fight back. Ethan remained silent. Ryan continued, his voice more urgent now. Vanessa is not going to stop. If she wins this, she will bury you. Financially, legally, personally. Ethan finally spoke. Then we do not let her win. There was something different in his tone, not the cold ambition Ryan was used to. Something steadier, something deeper. I need you focused, Ryan said.
We have to counter her narrative immediately. You need to appear stable, controlled, present. Ethan almost smiled at the irony. I am exactly where I need to be, he said quietly. Before Ryan could respond, Ethan ended the call. The room returned to silence, but it did not last long. A sharp knock broke through the stillness. Ethan turned toward the door. A nurse stepped in, followed by a man in a gray suit carrying a slim briefcase. The nurse looked slightly uncomfortable. Sir, she said carefully, this gentleman insists on speaking with you. He says it is urgent. Ethan did not need to ask who had sent him. Let him speak, Ethan said. The nurse nodded and stepped aside. The man in the suit walked in with measured confidence, his expression polite but detached. Mr. Caldwell, he said, my name is Daniel Reeves. I represent Miss Vanessa Hale. Of course, he did. Ethan's expression did not change.
This is not the place, Ethan replied coldly. I understand, Daniel said smoothly, but the matter is time-sensitive. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a set of documents. I have been instructed to deliver these to you personally, he continued. They are preliminary agreements that may allow for a more amicable resolution. Ethan did not take the papers. What kind of resolution? He asked. Daniel's smile was thin. One that prevents unnecessary escalation. If you sign, you voluntarily step down from your position as Chief Executive Officer, transfer temporary control to Miss Hale, and agree to a structured evaluation period. Ethan stared at him. And if I do not sign? He asked. Daniel closed the briefcase slowly. Then the court proceedings continue, he said. And given the evidence already submitted, it is unlikely to end in your favor. Ethan let the silence stretch. Then he stepped closer. You came into a hospital room, he said quietly, his voice dropping to something dangerous, to pressure me into signing away my company while a woman lies unconscious behind you and a child is sleeping beside her. Daniel did not flinch. I am here to offer you an option, he replied calmly. Ethan's eyes flicked briefly to Emma. She was still asleep, unaware of the storm unfolding around her. Ethan turned back. And Vanessa, he asked. Where is she? Daniel adjusted his tie slightly. On her way, he said. The words had barely settled when another sound echoed from the hallway. Heels. Sharp. Measured. Confident. Ethan did not need to turn to know who it was. Vanessa Hale stepped into the doorway like she owned the space. Elegant. Composed. Perfectly in control. Her eyes moved quickly across the room, taking in every detail. The hospital bed. Clara. The sleeping child. And finally, Ethan. Well, she said softly, a faint smile touching her lips. This is unexpected. Ethan said nothing. Vanessa stepped inside, her gaze lingering briefly on Emma before returning to him. You always did have a talent for surprises, she continued. But this one is particularly interesting. Ethan's voice was calm. Leave, he said. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. That is not how this works, she replied. You are not in a position to give orders anymore. Ethan's expression did not change. Then, say what you came to say, and go. Vanessa glanced at Daniel, who handed her the documents. She held them lightly, almost casually. You are running out of time, she said. The board is already questioning your stability. Your sudden disappearance today did not help. Ethan let out a quiet breath. I did not disappear, he said. I made a choice. Vanessa's smile sharpened slightly. Yes, she said. To sit in a hospital with a stranger and a street child while your company collapses. Her words were deliberate, precise, designed to provoke. Ethan did not react. But something in the air shifted. You have two options, Vanessa continued. Sign these papers and walk away with dignity, or fight me and lose everything. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time he saw her clearly, not as the woman he had once trusted, but as the architect of everything now unraveling. You planned this for a long time, he said quietly. Vanessa did not deny it. Of course, she replied. You do not build power overnight, Ethan. You should know that. Ethan nodded slowly. Yes, he said, I do. A brief silence settled between them. Then Ethan spoke again. But you made one mistake. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. And what is that? She asked. Ethan's gaze shifted briefly to Emma, then back to Vanessa. You assumed I would still care about the same things, he said. Vanessa's expression flickered, just for a moment. It was subtle, but it was there. Then she recovered. Everyone cares about power, she said. Especially you. Ethan did not answer. Instead, he stepped back slightly, placing himself closer to Emma's chair. A quiet, protective movement. Vanessa noticed. And this time, her smile faded just a little. Sign the papers, Ethan, she said, her voice colder now. This is your last chance. Ethan looked at the documents in her hand, then he looked at Clara, then at Emma, and finally, back at Vanessa. No, he said. The word was calm, absolute, and final. For the first time since she entered the room, Vanessa's composure cracked. Only slightly, but enough. Then, you leave me no choice, she said. Ethan met her gaze without hesitation.
You never needed one, he replied. The silence that followed was heavy, tense, and filled with something inevitable. Vanessa turned sharply, handing the documents back to Daniel. Proceed, she said coldly. Daniel nodded. They left without another word. The door closed behind them, and the moment it did, the quiet returned.
But it was no longer peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. Ethan stood still for a long time. Then slowly, he looked down at Emma. She stirred slightly in her sleep, her small hand tightening around Clara's fingers. Ethan exhaled quietly. The trap had been set, the walls were closing in. And by morning, everything he had built might already belong to someone else. But for the first time in his life, he was not sure he wanted to stop it. Morning came slowly. Not with sunlight, but with the soft hum of machines and the faint shuffle of nurses changing shifts in the hallway. Ethan had not slept. He stood by the window for most of the night, watching the skies shift from black to gray, his reflection staring back at him like a stranger he no longer recognized. Behind him, Emma stirred. He turned immediately. She blinked a few times, adjusting to the light, then sat up slowly in the chair beside the bed. Her small hand was still wrapped around Clara's, as if she had never let go. "Good morning," Ethan said quietly. Emma looked at him, then at her mother, and nodded. "Did she wake up?" she asked. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet." Emma absorbed the answer without complaint. She simply turned back to Clara, gently brushing a few strands of hair away from her mother's face, with careful fingers. Ethan watched that small gesture. There was something deeply unsettling about how natural it was, how practiced, as if this child had already learned how to take care of someone, instead of being taken care of. A doctor entered the room a few minutes later, clipboard in hand, her expression calm but serious. "Good morning," she said. "I am Dr. Harris. I have been overseeing Clara's case." Ethan straightened slightly. "How is she?" he asked. Dr. Harris glanced at the monitors before answering. "Her condition is stable," she said, "but she is still unconscious. The head trauma caused significant swelling. Until that reduces, we cannot predict when she will wake up." Emma looked up. "But she will wake up, right?" she asked. The doctor hesitated, just for a second, but Ethan noticed. "We are doing everything we can," Dr. Harris replied gently. It was not an answer. Emma seemed to understand that. She nodded slowly and looked back at her mother. Ethan stepped closer. "What does she need?" he asked. Dr. Harris met his gaze. "Time," she said, "and proper care, monitoring, medication, possibly rehabilitation, depending on how she recovers." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. "Then she gets everything," he said. Dr. Harris studied him for a moment. "You are family?" she asked. Ethan paused. Then he answered, "Yes." The word came easier this time. Dr. Harris gave a small nod. "Very well," she said. "I will have the administrative team coordinate with you." She turned and left the room. Silence followed again. Emma shifted slightly in her chair. "Are you really my mom's friend?" she asked. Ethan looked down at her. The question was simple, but the truth behind it was not. "I knew her a long time ago," he said. Emma frowned slightly. "Why did you not visit before?" she asked. Ethan did not answer immediately, because there was no answer that a child should have to hear. "I should have," he said finally. Emma watched him for a moment. Then she nodded. "Okay," she said. No judgment, no anger, just acceptance. It made it worse. Ethan turned away slightly, his chest tightening. He was not used to forgiveness. Not like this. Not without conditions. A nurse entered shortly after, carrying a small tray. "Breakfast," she said gently, placing it on the table beside Emma. Emma looked at the food but did not reach for it. Ethan noticed. "You should eat," he said. "I will wait," she replied. "For what?" "For my mom," Emma said. "She always eats with me." Ethan exhaled slowly. "She would want you to eat," he said. Emma hesitated. Then she picked up the spoon. But before she took a bite, she looked at him again. "Will you eat too?" she asked. Ethan blinked slightly. "I am not hungry," he said. Emma shook her head. "You should eat," she said. "You look tired." Ethan almost smiled. "Almost." "All right," he said quietly. He sat down across from her and picked up a piece of bread from the tray. They ate in silence. A strange, quiet moment in the middle of everything collapsing around him. His phone buzzed again. This time, he did not ignore it. "Ryan." Ethan stood and stepped toward the window before answering. "Tell me," he said. Ryan did not hesitate. "It is worse," he said. "The board is moving up the vote. This afternoon." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is fast," he said. "She pushed for it," Ryan replied. "Vanessa is presenting new evidence. Financial irregularities, erratic decisions, behavioral reports from staff." Ethan let out a quiet breath. "She is building a narrative," he said. "Yes," Ryan replied. "And it is working. Some of the board members are already leaning toward her." Ethan looked across the room again. Emma was eating slowly, carefully. Clara lay still, unmoving. "How many are still with us?" Ethan asked. Ryan paused. Not enough, he said. Ethan nodded once. I understand. Ethan, Ryan said, his tone shifting, you need to be here. In person. You need to fight this. Ethan remained silent. Do not tell me you are staying there, Ryan continued. This is your company. Your life. Ethan's gaze hardened slightly. No, he said quietly. It is not. Ryan went silent. For 5 years, I thought it was, Ethan continued. I thought that was everything. And now? Ryan asked. Ethan looked at Emma again. Then at Clara. And now I know better, he said. Ryan exhaled sharply. You are making a mistake, he said. Maybe, Ethan replied. But it is mine to make. He ended the call. For a moment, he just stood there, listening to the quiet. Then he turned back. Emma had finished eating. She carefully placed the spoon down and wiped her hands on a napkin. Then she climbed down from the chair and walked over to Clara again. Ethan watched as she reached into her small pocket. She pulled out something carefully, a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. She opened it gently and placed it on the bed beside her mother. What is that? Ethan asked softly. Emma looked up. It is something I wrote, she said. For her. Ethan stepped closer. The handwriting was uneven, childlike, but careful. He read the words silently. Mama, please wake up. I am being brave like you told me. I found someone who is helping us. You do not have to worry anymore. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest again. You wrote this by yourself? He asked. Emma nodded. I wanted her to see it when she wakes up, she said. Ethan swallowed. She will, he said quietly. Emma looked at him. You promise? She asked. Ethan hesitated, just for a moment. Then he nodded. I promise. The word settled heavily between them, because this time, he meant it. A sudden movement interrupted the stillness. Clara's fingers twitched, slight, barely noticeable, but real. Emma froze. Did you see that? She whispered. Ethan stepped closer immediately. He watched carefully. There it was again. A small movement. A sign. Doctor, Ethan called sharply. Within seconds, a nurse rushed in, followed by Dr. Harris. They moved quickly, checking monitors, adjusting equipment. Emma stepped back, her small hands gripping the edge of the chair. Is she waking up? She asked. Dr. Harris did not answer immediately. She leaned closer to Clara, watching closely. Then, slowly, Clara's eyelids fluttered. Once, twice, and then, they opened. The room went completely still. Emma gasped softly. Mama. Clara's gaze was unfocused at first, confused, lost. But then her eyes shifted. They found Emma. And everything changed. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Emma, she whispered weakly. Emma ran forward, grabbing her hand. I am here, she said quickly. I am right here. Clara's fingers tightened around hers. Then, slowly, her gaze lifted and landed on Ethan. The moment stretched, heavy, unavoidable. Recognition hit her like a shock. Her breath caught, tears slipped down the sides of her face. Ethan, she whispered. His name. After 6 years, spoken like it had never left her. Ethan stood frozen. Every part of him locked in place. He had imagined this moment in 100 different ways, but none of them felt like this. Raw, real, unforgiving. How? Clara began, her voice trembling. But she could not finish. Emma looked between them, confused, but sensing something deeper. Ethan finally stepped closer. I am here, he said quietly. It was not enough, but it was all he had. Clara closed her eyes briefly, tears continuing to fall. You came back, she whispered. Ethan did not answer. Because the truth was, he had not come back. He had simply run out of places to hide. And now, everything he had buried was standing in front of him. Awake. Waiting. And impossible to escape. Clara's breathing was uneven, fragile, as if every word required more strength than her body could give. But her eyes never left Ethan. Not even for a second. Emma still held her hand tightly, her small fingers wrapped around Clara's as if afraid she might disappear again. I am here, Emma said softly, her voice trembling now that the moment had finally come. I did not go anywhere. Clara's lips curved into the faintest smile. I know, she whispered. You never do. Her gaze shifted again. Back to Ethan. Everything in her expression changed. The softness remained, but something deeper surfaced beneath it. Something unresolved. Something that had waited years for this exact moment. Why are you here? Clara asked quietly. The question was not sharp, but it carried weight. Ethan exhaled slowly, stepping closer to the bed. I did not know it was you, he said. Not until yesterday. Clara studied him, searching his face as if trying to measure the truth in his words. And if you had known, she asked. Ethan did not answer immediately, because there was no answer that would not sound like an excuse. I should have looked for you, he said instead. I did not. Clara closed her eyes briefly. Pain flickered across her face, but it was not new. It was the kind that had settled long ago, becoming something quieter, something that no longer needed to announce itself loudly. I waited, she said. Ethan felt the words land harder than anything else.
For a long time, Clara continued, her voice still soft but steady now, longer than I should have. Emma looked between them, confusion growing in her eyes. Mama, she said gently, what are you talking about? Clara opened her eyes again. She looked at Emma.
And everything softened once more. Her free hand lifted slowly, brushing against Emma's cheek. There is something I should have told you a long time ago, she said. Emma blinked. What is it? She asked. Clara hesitated, not because she did not know what to say, but because once it was said, nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan felt it too. A quiet tension filled the room, pressing against his chest, making it harder to breathe. Clara, he said quietly, a warning in his tone, you do not have to do this now. Clara's gaze snapped back to him. Yes, she said, her voice suddenly firmer than before. I do. Silence fell. Emma looked at her mother again, her grip tightening slightly. Clara took a slow breath. Then she spoke. Emma, she said gently, do you remember when you asked me about your father? Emma nodded. You always said he was far away, she replied, and that he did not know about me. Clara's eyes filled with tears. That is true, she said. He did not know. Emma frowned slightly. Then how can he be my father? She asked, her voice small but steady. Clara's gaze shifted. Back to Ethan. Then, slowly, she said the words that had been waiting for years. Because he is right here. The room went completely still. Emma blinked. Once. Twice. As if her mind needed time to understand what her ears had just heard. Then she turned, very slowly, to Ethan. He stood there, unmoving, his face unreadable but his eyes filled with something he could no longer hide. No, Emma whispered. It was not rejection, it was disbelief. Clara squeezed her hand gently. It is true, she said softly. Ethan is your father. Emma's grip loosened. She stepped back slightly, her eyes still locked on him. You, she said, her voice shaking. You are my dad. Ethan felt something inside him break open. He had faced boardrooms filled with men who wanted to destroy him. He had stood in rooms where every decision carried millions of dollars. But nothing had ever felt like this. He took a slow step forward. Yes, he said quietly. The word barely made it out. Emma stared at him. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something familiar, something that made sense. You did not know, she asked. Ethan shook his head. No, he said. I did not. Emma looked down, processing, thinking. Then she looked back at Clara. Why did you not tell him? She asked. Clara's expression softened again, but there was guilt in it now. I tried, she said, at first, but he was gone. And then, I thought it was better this way. Better. Emma repeated. Clara nodded weakly. I did not want you to feel like you were not chosen, she said. I wanted you to grow up knowing you were enough, that you were loved completely. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I was, she said quickly. You always loved me. Clara smiled faintly. I still do, she whispered. Emma turned back to Ethan again. This time, her gaze was different. Not just confused, not just uncertain. There was something else now, something fragile, something new. Is it true? She asked. Are you really my dad? Ethan stepped closer again, slowly, as if approaching something that might disappear if he moved too fast. Yes, he said. Emma hesitated. Then she asked the question he feared most. Then why were you not here? The words were quiet, but they cut deeper than anything else. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment, because there was no way to answer that without exposing the truth he had spent years avoiding. I did not know, he said again, his voice heavier now. But that does not change the fact that I should have been. Emma watched him, silent. Then she looked at Clara again. And now, she asked. Clara's gaze shifted between them. That depends on him, she said softly. Ethan felt the weight of that immediately. This was not just about the past anymore. This was about what came next. Emma looked at him one more time, waiting, not demanding, not expecting, just waiting. Ethan took another step forward, then another, until he was standing right in front of her. He knelt down slowly, bringing himself to her level. For a moment, he did not speak. He just looked at her, really looked, at the way her eyes held both strength and uncertainty, at the way she stood her ground, even now, at the way she had taken care of her mother without ever asking for anything in return. And suddenly, everything made sense. I cannot change the past, he said quietly, but I can be here now, if you will let me. Emma blinked. A tear slipped down her cheek. You promise? She asked. The same question, but this time, it meant something entirely different. Ethan nodded. I promise. Emma hesitated. Then, slowly, she stepped forward, and wrapped her arms around him. The movement was small, careful, as if she was still unsure if this was real. Ethan froze for a fraction of a second. Then he held her, gently, but firmly, like he was afraid to ever let go. Clara watched them, tears slipping quietly down her face. Not from pain, but from something else. Something she had waited years to see. Something she had almost given up on. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to breathe. But the moment did not last. A sharp knock on the door broke the silence. Ethan's expression hardened slightly as he looked up. A nurse stepped in, followed by a man in a dark suit. "Mr. Hayes," the man said. "I am here on behalf of the board." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not now," he said. "I am afraid it cannot wait," the man replied calmly. "The vote has concluded." The room shifted again, reality crashing back in. Emma slowly stepped back from Ethan, sensing the change. Clara watched him carefully. "What happened?" she asked. Ethan stood up slowly. His face returned to something colder, more controlled. "They removed me," he said. Clara's breath caught. Emma looked between them, confused again. "Remove you from what?" she asked. Ethan did not answer immediately. Because in that moment, it no longer felt like the most important thing he had lost. He looked down at Emma, then at Clara, and for the first time, he did not feel empty. He had lost his company, his position, everything he had built over years, but standing here now, he realized something he had never understood before. None of it had ever been enough, and maybe, it never would have been. "I will explain later," he said softly to Emma. Then he turned back to the man. "Tell them I will handle the transition," Ethan said calmly. "On my terms." The man nodded and left without another word. Silence returned once more, but it was different now. Not heavy, not suffocating. Just uncertain. Clara looked at him. "You lost everything," she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "No," he replied. Then he looked at Emma again. "I did not." And this time, he knew exactly what he meant. The quiet did not last. It never did. By the time the afternoon light began to fade, the hospital room had become something else entirely. Not a place of recovery, but a fragile refuge standing in the path of an approaching storm. Ethan stood by the window again, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low but steady. "I want every document reviewed," he said. "Every signature, every transfer, every board communication from the last 6 months." Ryan's voice came through, tense but focused. "I already started," he said. "There are inconsistencies. Not enough to prove fraud yet, but enough to raise questions." "Then we do not raise questions," Ethan replied. "We expose answers." Behind him, Clara rested with her eyes closed, though she was not asleep. Her breathing had steadied, but the strain of everything she had heard still lingered in the tension of her body. Emma sat beside her, quietly drawing on a piece of paper the nurse had given her. She did not interrupt, she did not ask questions, but she listened to everything. "She filed the motion this morning," Ryan continued. "Temporary incapacity, supported by medical evaluations." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Those evaluations are false," he said. "I know that," Ryan replied. "But they are signed, and the court accepted them as preliminary evidence." Ethan's grip on the phone tightened slightly. "Then we challenge them," he said. "Independently. I want a full psychiatric review scheduled immediately." Ryan hesitated. "She anticipated that," he said. "Vanessa already submitted a request to restrict your access to any independent examiners." Conflict of interest. Ethan let out a quiet breath. Of course she had. Every move, he considered. She had already accounted for it. "She is not just reacting," he said slowly. "She is controlling the pace." "Yes," Ryan said. "And right now, she is ahead." Ethan remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke again, not for long. He ended the call. When he turned back, Clara was watching him. "You are going to fight her," she said. It was not a question. Ethan nodded. "I have to." Clara studied him carefully. "And what will it cost you this time?" she asked. The words were quiet, but they carried history. Ethan walked closer to the bed. "I already lost what mattered before," he said. "I am not making that mistake again." Clara held his gaze. "You say that now," she replied, "but war changes people." Ethan did not look away. "So does regret," he said. Silence settled between them again. Emma looked up from her drawing. "Who is Vanessa?" she asked. Ethan glanced at Clara briefly before answering. "She is someone who wants to take something that does not belong to her," he said. Emma frowned slightly. "Then why do they let her?" she asked. Ethan almost smiled. "Because she is very good at making people believe her," he said. Emma considered that. Then she looked back down at her paper. "I do not believe her," she said quietly. The simplicity of it landed harder than anything else. Ethan felt something steady inside him, something he had not felt in a long time. Not anger, not fear, clarity. His phone buzzed again. A message this time. Unknown number. He opened it. One image. A photograph of him entering the hospital earlier that day, Emma beside him. Below it, a single line of text. "Careful, Ethan. You are not the only one who can lose something." His expression darkened instantly. Clara noticed. "What is it?" she asked. Ethan hesitated for only a second. Then he handed her the phone. She read the message. Her face went pale. "She knows," Clara whispered. "Yes," Ethan said. Emma looked between them again. "What happened?" she asked. Ethan crouched down in front of her. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said gently. Emma shook her head.
You said you would not lie, she replied.
The words stopped him. Clara closed her eyes briefly. Ethan exhaled. You are right, he said. He chose his next words carefully. Someone is trying to scare us, he said. But I will not let anything happen to you or your mother. Emma watched him closely. Then she nodded. Okay, she said. She trusted him. Without hesitation, Ethan stood up again, his mind already moving. Vanessa had crossed a line. This was no longer just about the company, this was personal. And that changed everything. He dialed another number. This time, his tone was different, colder. I need protection arranged, he said as soon as the call connected. Discreet, but constant. Starting now. He listened for a moment. Yes, he added. For both of them. He ended the call and turned back. Clara was still watching him. You think she would hurt us? She asked. Ethan shook his head slowly. No, he said. She does not need to. Clara frowned slightly. What does that mean?
It means she wins if we are afraid, he replied. Emma looked up again. I am not afraid, she said. Ethan met her gaze. I know, he said. And he believed it. A quiet knock came at the door. This time, when it opened, it was not a nurse. Vanessa stepped inside, elegant as ever, composed, as if she belonged there, as if nothing had changed. Emma instinctively moved closer to Clara. Ethan's expression turned to stone. You should not be here, he said. Vanessa smiled faintly. And yet, she replied, here I am. Her gaze moved across the room, taking everything in. Clara in the bed, Emma at her side, then back to Ethan. There are rumors, already, she said. About you, about your instability. And now this. She gestured lightly toward the two of them. A hidden family, she continued. A child no one knew about. It does not look good. Ethan stepped forward. Leave, he said. Vanessa did not move.
Instead, she reached into her bag and placed a thin folder on the table. You should see this first, she said. Ethan did not touch it. What is it? He asked. Evidence, Vanessa replied. More than enough to make your removal permanent. And to ensure you never return. Clara's hand tightened around the blanket. What do you want? She asked. Vanessa turned her attention to her for the first time. A polite smile. Carefully constructed. I want this to end cleanly, she said. For everyone. Ethan let out a quiet, humorless breath. You mean for you, he said. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. I mean without unnecessary damage, she corrected. Sign the resignation. Withdraw any legal challenge. Disappear quietly. And if I do not? Ethan asked. Vanessa's smile did not change. Then I release everything, she said. The reports. The allegations. The narrative I have built. Her eyes flickered briefly toward Emma. And I make sure the world sees exactly what kind of man you are. The threat was clear. Not loud, but precise. Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping. You already showed me, he said, what kind of person you are. Vanessa's expression hardened for the first time. Careful, she said softly. You are not in a position to judge anyone. Ethan did not flinch. No, he replied. But I am in a position to stop you. Vanessa studied him for a moment. Then she straightened. You should think carefully, she said. Because if you lose this, you lose everything. Ethan glanced at Clara. Then, at Emma. And something in his expression changed. Not fear. Not doubt. Certainty. I already told you, he said quietly. I did not lose everything. Vanessa followed his gaze. She saw it then. The difference. And for the first time, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Not concern, but awareness. This was no longer the same man she had been manipulating. This one had something she could not control. Something she could not predict. She picked up her bag. This is your last chance, she said. Then she turned and walked out. The door closed behind her. Silence filled the room again, but it was no longer fragile, it was charged. Clara exhaled slowly. She is not going to stop, she said. Ethan nodded. I know. Emma looked at him. Are you going to let her win? She asked. Ethan met her eyes. No, he said. And this time, there was no hesitation at all. Night settled over the city, heavy and unrelenting, pressing against the hospital windows like a silent witness to everything that had come undone. Inside the room, the lights were dim. Emma had fallen asleep with her head resting beside Clara's arm, her small fingers still curled loosely against the blanket. Even in sleep, she did not drift far. Clara lay awake, her gaze fixed on the ceiling, her breathing slow but uneven. Ethan stood near the door, his jacket in his hand, as if he had been about to leave, but had not yet found the strength to take the first step. Neither of them spoke for a long time. You are going after her tonight, Clara said finally. It was not a question. Ethan did not turn. Yes, he replied. Clara closed her eyes briefly. I knew you would, she said. There was no accusation in her voice. Only certainty. Ethan exhaled slowly. I have everything I need, he said. Ryan found the transactions. Shell accounts. Fabricated reports. She built her case on lies. Clara turned her head slightly, looking at him now. And you can prove it? She asked. Yes. And if you expose her? Ethan's grip tightened around his jacket. She loses everything, he said. Clara studied him carefully. And what do you lose? She asked. The question lingered, because they both knew the answer was not simple. Ethan finally turned to face her. I get my company back, he said. Clara did not look convinced. That is not what I asked, she replied. Silence stretched between them. Ethan looked toward Emma. Still asleep, still peaceful. For now. I dragged this through the courts, he said slowly. Public hearings, media coverage, everything she threatened becomes real. Clara nodded faintly. And Emma? She asked. Ethan did not answer immediately, because there it was. The part he could not control. The part that changed everything. She becomes part of it, he admitted. Clara's expression tightened. She is a child, she said quietly. She did not choose any of this. I know. Then do not make her pay for it, Clara said. Ethan looked back at her, something sharper in his gaze now. And what do you suggest? He asked. I walk away. Let Vanessa destroy everything I built. Clara held his gaze. I suggest you decide what matters more, she said. The words landed with quiet force. Ethan looked away again, his mind moving, calculating, weighing outcomes the way he always had. But this time, the numbers did not matter. The consequences did. A soft movement broke the tension. Emma stirred, her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim light. She looked around, then sat up slightly. Are you leaving? She asked, her voice still heavy with sleep. Ethan softened immediately. He walked back toward her. I have something to take care of, he said. Emma watched him. Is it about her? She asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Emma pushed herself up, rubbing her eyes. Will it make things better? She asked. Ethan crouched down beside her. It could, he said. Emma tilted her head slightly. Or it could make things worse, she said. Ethan did not respond, because she was right. Emma looked down at her hands, then back at him. I do not like her, she said quietly, but I do not want you to go away again. The words were simple, but they hit harder than anything Clara had said. Ethan felt it immediately, that pull, between who he had been, and who he was trying to become. I am not going anywhere, he said. Emma searched his face. Even if you lose, she asked. Ethan paused, then he answered honestly. Yes. Emma nodded slowly. Okay, she said. She lay back down, resting her head again near Clara's arm. Within minutes, her breathing steadied once more, as if she had already said everything that mattered. Clara looked at him. She trusts you, she said. Ethan nodded. I know. That is not something you can afford to break, Clara added. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. I am trying to fix what I already broke, he said. Clara's gaze softened, but her voice remained steady. Then do not break something new in the process, she replied. Silence filled the room again. Ethan stood there, unmoving, caught between two paths that no longer looked as clear as they once would have. His phone buzzed. Ryan. Ethan stepped into the hallway before answering. It is ready, Ryan said immediately. We can file tonight. Once it is public, she cannot recover from this. Ethan leaned against the wall, closing his eyes briefly. How fast does it spread? He asked. Hours, Ryan replied. By morning, every outlet will have it. Ethan imagined it. The headlines, the scrutiny, the questions. Emma's face pulled into something she did not understand. Clara forced to relive everything in public. And Vanessa, destroyed. Ethan, Ryan pressed. This is your moment. You take it now, or you lose it. Ethan opened his eyes, his gaze steady. No, he said. Ryan went silent. What? He asked. I am not filing it, Ethan said. A beat. Then disbelief. You are joking, Ryan said. I am done playing her game, Ethan replied. This is not a game, Ryan snapped. This is your company, your reputation, your entire future. Ethan's voice did not change. I know exactly what it is, he said. Then why would you walk away now? Ryan demanded. Ethan looked back through the glass panel of the door. At Emma, at Clara, because I finally have something she cannot take from me, he said. Ryan exhaled sharply. You are making a mistake, he said again. Maybe, Ethan replied, but it is the right one. He ended the call. For a moment, he just stood there, the weight of the decision settling in. Then he walked back into the room. Clara watched him carefully. You chose, she said. Ethan nodded. Yes. And? She asked. Ethan stepped closer. I am not going after her, he said. Clara's expression shifted. Not relief, not entirely, but something close to it. And your company? She asked. Ethan let out a quiet breath. She can have it, he said. The words felt strange, but not wrong. Emma stirred slightly in her sleep, as if sensing something had changed. Ethan looked at her, then back at Clara. I spent years building something I thought defined me, he said, but it never did. Clara held his gaze. And now? She asked. Ethan's voice softened. Now I know what does. Clara's eyes filled with quiet emotion. You are different, she said. Ethan shook his head slightly. No, he replied. I just stopped running. The room settled into a new kind of silence. Not heavy, not uncertain, just real. Outside, the city continued as it always did, unaware that inside this small hospital room, a man had just walked away from everything he once believed mattered most. And for the first time in his life, he did not feel like he had lost. The days that followed did not arrive with dramatic change. There were no sudden victories, no public apologies, no grand reversals of everything that had been lost. Instead, life moved forward quietly, steadily. Clara remained in the hospital for another week, her strength returning little by little. The doctors spoke in careful optimism, and for once, Ethan did not try to rush outcomes he could not control. He learned to wait. He learned to sit still. He learned to listen. Emma became the center of those days. Every morning, she insisted on opening the curtains herself, as if sunlight was something she could command. She read aloud from the small books the nurses brought her, her voice soft but determined, even when she stumbled over difficult words. Ethan listened to every one of them, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. At first, the rhythm of it all felt unfamiliar to him. Too slow, too simple. But gradually, something inside him adjusted. Or, perhaps, something long buried, finally surfaced. He stopped checking his phone every hour, then every few hours. Eventually, he left it on the table for entire afternoons without noticing. The world he had once fought so hard to control continued without him, and for the first time, he did not feel the need to chase it. Clara watched the change quietly. One afternoon, as Emma slept curled up beside her, Clara looked at Ethan across the room. "You really let it go," she said. Ethan followed her gaze briefly, then looked back at her. "Yes," he replied. "No regret?" she asked. Ethan considered the question. "Not the kind I expected," he said. Clara studied him. "And the kind you did not expect." Ethan exhaled slowly. "I regret how long it took me to understand what mattered," he said. Clara's expression softened. "That is not regret," she said. "That is clarity." Ethan almost smiled. "Then I finally have it," he replied. There was a quiet knock at the door before it opened. Ryan stepped inside. He looked the same as always, sharp, composed. But there was something different in his eyes when he saw Ethan. Something between disbelief and reluctant understanding. "I thought you would be back by now," Ryan said. Ethan gestured lightly toward the chair. Ryan remained standing. "They finalized everything," he continued. "Vanessa has full control. She is already restructuring, removing people loyal to you." Ethan nodded once. "I expected that." Ryan watched him carefully. "That is all you have to say?" he asked. Ethan met his gaze. "What else is there?" he replied. Ryan let out a quiet breath, running a hand through his hair. "You built that company from nothing," he said. "You fought for every inch of it." Ethan glanced toward Emma. Still asleep. Peaceful. "I know," he said. "And you are just going to let her take it?" Ryan pressed. Ethan looked back at him. "Yes." Ryan shook his head slightly. "I do not understand you anymore," he admitted. Ethan nodded. "I did not understand myself either," he said. Ryan followed his gaze this time, to Emma, to Clara. Something shifted in his expression. Subtle, but real. "She is yours," Ryan said quietly. Ethan did not look away. "Yes." Ryan was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question that mattered. "And that is enough?" Ethan answered, without hesitation. "It is everything." The words settled between them, not as an argument, but as a truth Ryan could not ignore, even if he did not fully accept it. "I will handle what is left," Ryan said finally. "The legal loose ends. The transition." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." Ryan hesitated near the door, then he spoke again. "If she crosses a line, if she comes after you again." Ethan's expression did not change. "She will not," he said. Ryan raised an eyebrow slightly. "You sound certain." Ethan looked at Clara, then at Emma. "She already lost the only leverage that mattered," he said. Ryan did not ask what he meant. Because now, he understood. A few days later, Clara was discharged. The air outside the hospital felt different, lighter. Emma held Ethan's hand as they walked slowly toward the car, her grip firm, as if she had already decided this was where she belonged. Clara followed beside them, still careful in her movements, but stronger with every step. For a moment, they paused. Just before getting in, Emma looked up at him. "Where are we going?" she asked. Ethan glanced at Clara briefly, then back at Emma. "Home," he said. Emma frowned slightly. "Which one?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "The one we are going to build," he replied. Emma seemed to consider that, then she nodded. "Okay," she said. It was enough for her. And somehow, that made it enough for him, too. The house they chose was not large, not impressive. It did not sit above the city or carry the weight of status. But it had light, it had space. It had a small garden where Emma insisted on planting things she could not yet name. Clara filled the rooms with quiet presence, her laughter returning slowly, cautiously, as if testing whether it was safe to exist again. And Ethan. Ethan learned a different kind of work. He fixed things that broke.
He cooked meals that were not perfect. He showed up. Every day. Without fail. There were moments when the past tried to reach him, calls he did not answer, messages he did not read.
News he did not follow. Vanessa's world continued to rise and shift and evolve without him. But it no longer pulled at him the way it once had. Because here, in the small, imperfect life he was building, he had something far more demanding than power. Something that required more than control. He had responsibility. He had presence. He had love. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft gold, Ethan sat on the steps outside, watching Emma chase something invisible across the yard, her laughter filling the air. Clara joined him quietly, lowering herself beside him. "You look different," she said. Ethan did not take his eyes off Emma. "I feel different," he replied. Clara leaned back slightly, letting the silence settle. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. Ethan thought about it. The boardrooms, the negotiations, the endless pursuit of more. Then he looked at Emma again, at the way she turned back to make sure he was still there, at the way she smiled when she saw him watching. "No," he said. And this time, there was no hesitation. Clara studied him for a moment longer. Then she nodded. "Good," she said. Emma ran back toward them, slightly out of breath, her face flushed with excitement. "Did you see me?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "I always do," he said. Emma grinned, satisfied, and sat down between them, leaning lightly against his arm. The three of them remained there as the light faded. No urgency, no fear, no need to be anywhere else. And in that quiet, unremarkable moment, Ethan understood something he had spent years chasing without ever finding. Wealth was never what he had built. It was what he had almost lost, and what he had finally chosen to keep.